Imagine being a kid constantly moving from one country to another. Japan, Korea, Arizona, Texas. Every new school means starting over, new friends, new culture, new language, and sometimes complete isolation. You either sink into the background or you learn to adapt, to grit your teeth, to make yourself seen. Now, imagine taking that constant reinvention and turning it into a company that has served over 11,000 students, generated millions in revenue, and just launched into Silicon Valley with cutting edge AI. That is the story of today's guest, Jay Veal, founder and CEO of Inc. Education. His story isn't just about education, it's about grit, resilience, and the truth about what it really takes to be an entrepreneur when less than 1% of venture funding goes to founders who look like him. Welcome to Revenue Without Borders, where we make global business simple. I'm your host, Jamelia Greer. And today, Jay and I are diving into the highs, the lows, and the unfiltered reality of building something bigger than yourself. Let's get into it. Jay, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. And I'm super excited today to talk about entrepreneurship and, of course, your journey as someone who was part of a military family, had some time abroad, and then moving into all the wonderful stuff you've done in the education space. Welcome.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you much for having me.
So where should we start? I mean, you were from California, from the West Coast, but you did spend time abroad in Korea and Japan. What was
Right.
that like?
Yeah. So, growing up as a little kid, kind of in that situation where you're little, you're going in between different places, different bases, different countries, seeing different things. One thing that my mom and dad always kind of like really instilled in me is really not having a mindset that's closed off, that's straight up in the country you're in. I think that oftentimes we as people in general get so comfortable and complacent in the country that we're in, we forget that there's a whole nother world out there. It's just like being in a room, right? That's dark. And you forget, when you're watching a movie and you get done watching a movie that it's still light outside and you're like, oh man, I forgot it's still daytime. So when you're living life and you're in one country and you're there your whole life and don't get a chance to experience anything outside of that, it was a really good eye-opening experience. It's just as a little kid, I'm able to get educated like those out there in different countries, and of course being in Okinawa, which is back then, when my parents were in the Air Force, Kadena Air Force Base was the base that we were stationed at, right? And so I was there for 3 years and I got a chance to go to school. Shout out, I guess, to the Stallions. I forgot, I think it was the Knights, what we were. But it was like, a middle school, elementary school, excuse me, in Okinawa. And I got a chance to really at the time, learn Japanese. I learned it and I was able to write it and start looking at the calligraphy. And so that's where I originally learned calligraphy. But I lost it when I moved back to America and became bilingual in Spanish instead. So one of those things that you learn and you get a chance to experience is another language. Also, enough of us don't get a chance to be multilingual, right? Or bilingual. So I think it's important for you to not only in business be able to understand different languages, but in life be able to communicate with different people from different cultures and you can speak their language. It's one of those things that I think is a hidden gem that people should encourage, even with my daughter, like I started, giving her a couple of words in Spanish, but I think that it's important as they continue to go along and become global citizens, they're able to learn languages. So at the end of the day, this experience was different. Culture was different. Kobe, I don't really eat beef, but like a couple times a year, but Kobe beef is like the best beef in the world. Like it's crazy tender. It's really good. But, in America, we see birds flying around. In Japan, I saw bats. So it was a little different. You start to be like, what's going on with the bats? And the bugs are big. I always say when you can hear bugs walk, it's different kind of bugs. You know what I'm saying? So
That's definitely different.
yeah, but all in all, fun experience, once I left there.
That's really fascinating because I find that when people, particularly when you're young and then you move abroad and then you come back and you're having all these different points in your life where you're moving from one school to another, that builds something in you. You can either call it character, you can call it
Yeah.
resilience. What would you describe what that built in you?
You know what? I would describe it as grit. I think it one thing that I did, I actually had a conversation with one of my friends the other day, and I go back and forth with how I feel about this from an emotional lens. But I literally left all my friends my senior year of high school and went to Texas and I went to another state. And, I was cool with all my friends cool with all my friends in the other high school, but I just like, at the time both my parents were like on that line of retirement back to back. So my dad had another year in the Air Force than my mom did. My mom retired first, and then my dad retired the year after, and I had a choice. My choice was stay with my dad in Japan for the next year or, move and go with my mom to the States. So I decided to go with my mom to the States only because I just decided that I kind of wanted another experience. I had already been out there in Japan for a couple of, after I kind of left, but I had already been there, been there right before. So I'm just like, okay, well, now it's time to pick another route. So, when I decided to go with her and kind of do my last year, I started over from scratch. Didn't know nobody, what I'm saying? Didn't have no friends. I was just at the time, I was, early, a young kid just trying to get my footing. And I had to make something happen, right? I had to start creating conversations with people. You can no longer become the shy student or the shy person. You have to go out there and just state your case to people, right? Let them know who you are, where you came from, what you can bring to the table, what I'm saying, how you need help, and just go in. And my mom used to be scared because I was small. When I was in high school, I was like 4'11", 5'1". I didn't get my growth spurt till later. And so she used to think I was going to get locked in a locker, in high school and get into trouble that way. But I feel like I had a lot of different experiences just growing up in general, even and when I was in Arizona. Like, funny enough, I hung around with a lot of the gangs, right? They were back then, there was Brown Pride and Sutrese and all those gangs. But while they were all my friends and I hung around with them, that's not the path I followed, right? But it is where I learned Spanish. So I'm not gonna lie, there was a benefit to that in a sense too. But yeah, I think that grit, being able to put yourself in different environments and not know where you're at or who you're with doesn't matter, right? You need to move yourself around the room, learn how to work the room, and learn how to understand the room for you to move about. And that is what I had to do. So even before I went into entrepreneurship in my career, I had to learn that early, even before I went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis and all that.
So what's really interesting is as I listen to you speak, I do think about my sons who are also raised abroad. We've been living abroad for several years, and they spent time in China and Singapore. And I mentioned to you before we started recording that now, they're both, one's already in Morehouse, the other one is on his way there. And one thing I've learned after those first 2 years of him kind of reintegrating back into Black culture. Right. So there's another piece, like you've been abroad, you've been in Japan, you've been in Korea, obviously you're excelling at math, right? You are just, breaking all the records with the test scores. Did you find that there was a piece of you that was not fitting in Black America when you came back?
I think that, we all feel that one thing that we're the only ones, right? Like in rooms, in schools, in classes, in environments, what I'm saying? In administration, even with the current administration. Like, it's just so much going on in the world that we have to watch out for as, minorities and even Black Americans. Like, I think that when you go into something, there's two things that you have to walk into, right? One of those is I walk into a room and I don't fit, right? It's almost like you're a square, right? And you're trying to fit into all the round pegs and round holes in the room. And you find yourself the oddball, not knowing how you're going to get your next opportunity or know how you're going to mingle around with other people because you're the square, right? Everybody else is circular. But then you also have a scenario where it's like you are the individual who needs to own the room as well, right? You don't know your environment at the same time, but you have to kind of make things happen, right? Because either you don't fit or you build your own table, right? So ain't but one, two options, right? So I think that, when I came back, it was one of those times where I had to think, okay, coming back into the States, what I'm saying, to finish off school. My mom and dad have high expectations of me academically, life wise, and I think even primarily academically, I can really remember when I used to get grounded if I got like a B. So I just really had to lock in and focus on being the best out there. Like my friends was like, yeah, we want to go, what I'm saying? We want to go play basketball and do this and do that and go out and kick it with the homies and, what I'm saying, with the girls. But I was like, all right, that's cool and everything, but I gotta study. So I just surrounded myself with individuals who were from that dynamic and was able to, at the time, I got like $385,000 worth of money to go to school. So I didn't have to pay for my undergrad or my graduate school because I had scholarships and stuff like that. But it was due to me being focused in on what is the main goal. The main goal is to walk the stage, what I'm saying, graduate without having to pay for college. I promised my mom and dad that, what I'm saying, to pay them back. And not even really to pay them back because you can really never pay your parents back. But to pay them back, I would not have them pay for my school. And so I kept my promise and made sure that I was done. And now I want to do the same thing for my daughter. But my daughter now has heavy shoes to fill with the reputation I have and education across the country from the media and everything else that I've been in. I think it's going to be a hard road for her. I'll be back, be able to back her up as well as her mom, what I'm saying, to ensure that she's successful either way.
So it sounds like your parents really instilled this work ethic in you to study hard. And that obviously paid off with education, with your, the scholarships that you got. But at
Yeah.
what point did you realize, like, hey, I'm not just good at math and the subjects that I'm working in, but I also can tutor and teach others?
Yeah. So, and funny enough, like my my mom had told me when I was growing up younger that she's like, you had a hard time counting money, and I'm like, really? So, like, how did that happen? The kind of person I am now, I didn't, there was some sort of issue, what I'm saying, with math and being able to count correctly. I was counting on my fingers and things of that nature before I understood. And so, one thing that she told me to do was you cannot get, what I'm saying, anything that I buy for you until you go in front of me in the line. And then whatever gets rung up, what I'm saying, at the register, I'm going to hold whatever bill I'm going to pay in front of you. And you got to tell me how much change I'm going to get back and calculate in your head before the cashier tells me what change I'm going to get back. If you don't tell me the answer before that, then you don't get what I want. And so I had to get practice. I got a lot of practice on, what I'm saying, oh, she's paying with $20 bill. Oh, okay. Total is $14.62. What am I gonna get back? Oh, well, it's $5.38. You know what I'm saying? So my calculations, eventually they started calling me a human calculator because I was able to calculate stuff so quick in my head that I didn't necessarily need to use one in certain cases because I've had enough practice trying to do that mathematically. So over time, as I grew into, graduating and things like that and got into college and stuff and graduated college, I went into tech. Had no idea I was going to be a mathematician or be an educator or be an entrepreneur, none of that. I just thought I was going to be in IT like my parents. My mom, when she was in the military, she started out as an what's called age. Those that are in the military and Air Force know what this is, but age is the aircraft mechanic group. Right. So she started her career in the military working on plane engines. And then from plane engines, she went into law and she was in JAG. And then from law, she went into tech. And so my dad, he was in tech and he started out in bombs and ammunition on planes. And so it was like my mom was working on planes in the engines and my dad was blowing stuff up. So, I kind of had those two. My first science project was a bomb, you know what I'm saying? So I was creating a bomb rather. So not a real bomb. Don't everybody go back and take this podcast, say I'll be blowing up stuff. I'm just saying that's how I started off, was knowing how to blow stuff up. Right. So outside of that, as my career came, I was trying to go in their pathway, and then my pathway went that direction. Then it took a turn and went somewhere else when God told me something, what I need to be doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Your parents are really, I mean, they are really people who excel. And I don't know if listeners understand, me as a lawyer, I know that the requirements to get into JAG are pretty high, right? And that's not even what she started with. She started with something totally different. And then after that went on to IT. So you've got this work ethic and this study ethic in you. And then you had this calling. How did how did you act on it at first when you said, okay, well, education is important. You realized it was important. But there's always a gap between, you spot a problem and you spot an issue, and then how do you get the solution and how do you execute it? So what did that look like?
Yeah. So, first thing, so God told me, to be in education, roughly around 2007 ish. And, I had actually always, I'm a spiritual person. I'm not the holiest, you know what I'm saying? I'm not the most spiritual, but, I did have a time where I was like, hey, um, I was praying to him about some things, and I was like, I don't know what I should do and what my passion should be, because the data point now is 85% of people are on Earth. They are here, but they don't, before they die, they never get a chance to do what they're supposed to do for their passion and their purpose. And so me with 2 degrees, and my first was in information systems with a minor in mathematics, and my second one was a master's in education and curriculum instruction mathematics. I was able to use both degrees. Like, luckily, I one of the few who used all my degrees in all my jobs and didn't have to worry about not using it. So I think that when I went into education and I started to grapple with what does that industry kind of look like, I graduated from Townview Science Engineering Magnet High School in Dallas my last year. And I came in, 16-year-old high schooler, 16-year-old senior, taking 8 AP classes, college level load, as a 16-year-old. And I was, I graduated number 3 in my class when I graduated, but it was heavy though. So when I got there and I went out to school and everything like that and started my career, I actually went back to my first assignment teaching in my teaching career was back at where I graduated from. So I was like, I lucked out. Okay, that's cool. But the problem with that is, how are you going to stick a first year teacher at that time, not now, because it's still one of the top high schools in the country, but it was like number 3 in the country back then, at a top national, top 5 high school, doing one of the most difficult classes that you can teach at that high school, which in this case was fast track mathematics. So for my educators out there that when they understand this dynamic, it's basically teaching freshmen 3 years of pre-AP math in 1 year. And so I would teach them the whole year of pre-AP geometry from August to May. At the same time, that same group of freshmen, I taught them the whole year of pre-AP Algebra 2 from August to January, right? Whole year. Break, we take winter break, then I teach them the whole year of pre-AP pre-calculus from January to May. So they learn 3 full credits of math in 1 year. Sophomore year, they take AP calculus and they're complete. First year teaching, no experience out the gate. All my kids got 100% perfect scores on the state exam my first year. So I was like, okay, God, I see you. I guess I'm supposed to be here then. So I continued, for another 3.5 years, 4.5 years, different districts, DeSoto, Cedar Hill, Dallas, Prosper, Garland, not the district, but a charter organization, and just different places, and really found my footing. And you talked about, or you asked the question of kind of like, where did you kind of see that dynamic and kind of how what you thought you could change? But what I noticed was, when I started my company even, was that Black and brown students were not getting the tutoring that they needed or the support that they needed inside the classroom or outside the classroom. And so my thought processes was, Hispanic students are more hands-on, right? And that's how they see and learn things. Black students are more relationship based, meaning that, you got to really build a solid relationship with them before they're going to do things for you and before they're going to learn something. And you have to really let them see the why of what they're being taught. In addition to building a solid relationship, like a brother or sister around them, they need community. And so I thought about building like a holistic approach around students. And so basically building solid relationships with them, including different stakeholders in their learning processes, mentoring them and providing back-end support. They had a whole ecosystem around it they couldn't fail out of unless they felt like wanting to do it themselves, right? So with that being said, fast forward a course of time, in 7.5 years ish, we were able to help out over 11,000 students, built a company from scratch, bootstrap, no venture capital, out of my own pockets, from zero to like over 2.5 million in earned revenue. What I'm saying, to build an organization around supporting students, right? And then eventually we're able to partner with some individuals, help others, and just make some great things happen. As of recently, last week, I just graduated from my accelerator in Silicon Valley for tech, but now I'm trying to build an EdTech company called Bright Match, and so that is a platform that we're working on that basically will assess students' learning styles, assign them a tutor exactly how they need it, based on AI powered learning assessments and tutor-student matching algorithms. So all that stuff is kind of new. In that particular program, we had about 717 applicants who got to the final applicant pool out of thousands of people. About 56 companies made it into the cohort. Only 12 of us graduated and only 2 of us were Black. So, and we're talking about Silicon Valley. So I think to be in an accelerator and make it out of Silicon Valley is tough. Now I gotta represent for the home team. So that's it.
That's amazing. So you dropped some pretty fascinating statistics there, particularly when you talk about the number of students that you guys have worked with, and this whole evolution from this mindset of we are tutoring to now we're scaling and we're going to use AI and algorithms to match students to tutors, etc. And when a lot of people listen to this, particularly those corporate professionals who are like, oh, I want to get out and start my own company. I want to do this. I want to do that.
Yeah.
There is like always such a gap between somebody who is like how you said at the beginning, you were like, tutoring one-on-one, right? To, hey, I'm at Silicon Valley Accelerator. And I always like to talk about like what happens in the middle, because that's where a lot of people's fear comes in. Really, a lot of people get scared. Like they see the vision, they see where they want to go, but there's all these doubts, all these fears and concerns that come in that time. I know you had some challenges, but what mindset helped you when you were going through rough patches, and what rough patches did you go through?
Man, I think there's so many different things and lessons learned growing up into a founder, right? I think founder life is very, very tough. I tell people now, it's not the pathway for everybody. I spoke at a month ago. I spoke at University of Chicago, at the Booth School of Education, which is the graduate school. Booth is like number 3, I think, in the country. It's a pretty crazy to be around all those brilliant people that I was around and on the panel with up there. But the journey of entrepreneurship is not linear, right? It is very jagged edged, and I think social media has painted a picture that entrepreneurship is like this glamorous thing. All you see is Lambos and Ferraris and private jets and all this stuff, right? And all this money everywhere. It's nowhere near close to that. You have to really start out with a problem that needs to be solved first. Like, you're not an entrepreneur if you're not solving a problem, period. It's just one of those things, right? A lot of people claim to be business owners and entrepreneurs, but they're really not. They're glamorized people that they work, but they haven't really found something that people want and will pay for all the time, right? So I think that first of all, knowing that you have something that people want and that a problem needs to be solved is the first thing. The next part is, how do you build your business, right? How do you start to get your EIN? You do things for the IRS, you get your setup with the state, right? The Secretary of State. How do you get business credit, right? I'm a very big proponent of credit, and I have a whole another business, that I operate with that, and I'm pretty huge on financial literacy. But being able to understand how to build your personal credit so you can get business credit later and have that something to fall on or leverage, as we say, to do other things with, right? Or to support your business. And then operations. How do you operate your organization? Are you using systems? Are you doing Are you using certain CRMs? Do you have, now we have AI. Well, we've always had AI for a very, very long time, but now it's being more so put into use now with all the LLMs and everything else. And so I actually just recently did a talk at Black Founder Weekend at Paul Quinn about AI tools, and I'm actually about to go there to speak to 150 freshmen next week about that too. But really understanding how do those things work, how do the tools work? Because there's a lot of stuff coming out every week. You know what I mean? There's stuff changes happening every week, updates happening every week. It's really hard to keep up with all that. So you really just got to figure out and focus on what is needed for you to operate your business. You don't need every single AI tool. You don't need every single tool, period. You just need to find out what works for you and your business, right? Now, once you have that done, have blinders on and go all in. And that's when you look at, okay, what kind of individuals do I need to hire? Am I hiring the right people, right? How do I need to figure out my financial structure? I will say this, when I first started, how you build your financial structure in business to like go a certain way and to make revenue, right? So I was going up, you know what I'm saying, in the beginning, but it was more like this, like a slow climb versus like this, like people that, have, corn companies and they scale fast like that. Right. And so what I noticed was before I was operating on really paying the tutors a percentage when I was starting to grow, starting to just grow. And I found through, at the time, my COO, Clinton, so shout out to Clinton, he was like, nah, I think you need to be doing something a little bit different, right? You need to really structure things around hourly rates instead. And then from there, you tier your hourly rate structure, based on the experience. And then you could take the percentage of the hourly rate you actually charge, split that into one part for the business and one part to the tutor based on their rate structure. And I was like, all right, interesting. Let me try that. So when I tried it, like we increased our revenue, at the time quite a bit. And so we continue that pathway. And that was one of the lessons I had to learn, was really just how do you really build financial structures in your business, right? And how do you really hire people? Another data point that people may or may not be aware of, I think at this time now we are, just as well as venture capital, and that less than 1% goes to black founders or minorities, is the fact that over 90% of Black owned businesses are sole proprietorships. And the reason why they never scale to where they want is because they don't have a team. It's just them. So in order for you to grow and really get where you want to get to, become, $1 million companies, multi-million dollar companies, billion-dollar companies, trillion-dollar companies. I guess shout out to NVIDIA, who just made 4 trillion market cap recently last week. So if you're not investing in NVIDIA, shame on you. You need to invest in NVIDIA. I actually just was able to see the other program I'm in Perplexity. We actually had him, the CEO, speak 2 days ago. So it was good to hear his insights. But at any rate, one of those things is learning how to scale in different ways. And as a founder, you won't go anywhere if you don't hire people, right? You have to hire people. There's only so much you can duplicate. You're so thin. When we, as entrepreneurs, we want to do everything. We want to be marketing. We want to do sales. We want to do, systems. We want to do, a social media. That's great. And you have the skill set, but to duplicate yourself, you have to hire others. And I think that's part of the thing, part of the problem that we have, right? And so along this journey has just been, those are some of the lessons that I've learned. And I'll say this as the lasting point on that question. When I listened to Jensen Huang, say what he said, the CEO of NVIDIA, the other day, I was appalled because he was, they asked him and it was like, what are your goals? What are your goals for next year with NVIDIA, and what do you want to do? Like, how is this? Y'all just hit $4 trillion. Like, what's next? And he was just like, I don't have no goals. And I was like, what? I don't have no goals. I just don't have no goals. I wake up every day and I am blessed and happy to be alive and be at a job that I love to do. That's it. I don't expect, I don't have no key performance indicators or KPIs of my team. I don't, make them have to hit a certain number, to be here. I don't do none of that. I wake up, I have fun. I do my thing as a CEO, and I'm just happy to be here. My team, The company, they do what they do. I don't have to push them to do a whole lot of stuff. I don't have to be, you have to hit 1 million in sales this week. I don't do none of that because it's just not needed. It's very simple. You do what you're supposed to do. You are solving a problem and you live your passion. That's it. And I was like, I had to sit with that. I was like, damn, am I doing too much? Because, you know, for, for,
Yeah. Yeah.
for a company to be a $4 trillion company and the CEO is just like, I don't do this for my team. My team ain't got to do this. It's very simple. I don't got no goals. I just chill every day. That's it. I just wake up and go to work. Are we doing too much? And that's a question you got to ask yourself as a founder and entrepreneur is, are you doing too much? That made me think. Yeah.
Right. That's really powerful because burnout is real, and I've had those moments too where you feel like, oh, I want to do this, but there's opportunity here, and you got to focus. You get to
Mhm.
choose one thing and go after that. And I think to your point about scaling and hiring other people, that's really valid too. And I think a lot of women, particularly, we feel like I could do this, I could do that, I got this, I got that. We want to do everything.
Right.
And it takes practice
Mhm.
to realize that you can't, that you cannot do everything. And you do need to hire other people. And you do need to have advice from people who are, experts in other things. Like you said, your COO had mentioned to you, okay, well, let's not do percentages, let's do flat hourly fees, right?
Right.
And so that was something that was a little different perspective that you had, but we need people like that. We need to surround ourselves with people who can
Mhm.
advise us because it's not a one man show or a one woman show at all. You need.
Right. Exactly. You can't do everything by yourself. We think we can. I was able to carry a lot of the weight when I first started, and I could tutor at the time. I tutored everything. I tutored Spanish, English, math, science, all of it. Right. But then I was just like, nah, I gotta grow. I gotta do other things. I can't go speak and do these other things if I'm stuck doing everything all the time. And even I'm not perfect at it yet. Still, there's things I still got to do because I have a book of clients that just want me to tutor them, and I try to let them go somewhere else. To my team, but they won't move. So it's just one of those things where you have to try to figure out the balance. And I'm gonna be honest with you, folks that are listening, being an entrepreneur is no balance. I'm just gonna be honest. People be like, "Oh yeah, you can find a balance." And I hate the phrase. People do people you will find time to do something if you love to do it. No, that's not true. If you are super busy and you have a lot of things going on, you're trying to be a parent, I have a toddler, you're trying to be a parent of a toddler, you're trying to run a business, you're trying to run now a new startup, you're trying to go to these events, you're trying to market your stuff, you're trying to post about things, you got to travel, you got to present, you got to go speak, you got to go do it is so much. And even though you want to make time to do things with your significant other or your friends or your family, stuff like that, it ain't enough time. It's just not. So I'm not going to sit here and say and lie to you and be like, oh yeah, people make time for what they want. No, people make time when they have time. You know what I'm saying? When you don't have time, you just ain't got it. So when that time comes, you make the time, but it's just not, I think that's a fallacy, on those 2 points. There is no balance as an entrepreneur. You're going to have long nights. You're going to have long days. There are going to be some days you can't do nothing because your toddler comes in and wants to be in your lap all day. And you thought you were going to be able to work, but you couldn't. So now your work is delayed.
Yeah.
Then you got, they want your time outside. Come play with me. Come sit with me. Come do this. So you got to do that. And as a parent, that's what you do. It's what you signed up for, right? That's what you got to do. But outside of that, it's just not, there's no real clear, distinct balance. You just have to figure out what works for you. And you make time when you have time. You don't make time for things you want. You make time when you got it. And that's all I can say.
Yeah, that's so true. And I agree. Like, I find that there are periods of time where I'm definitely more, I won't say ignoring my business, but I'm full on mom mode, right? Like I'm doing all the mom stuff. And if you looked at me, you wouldn't even know that I have a business or I'm doing anything entrepreneurial. And then there are times when I may feel guilty because I'm not going to be doing that mom stuff. I'm going to be away. I'm going to be missing things that, I would have liked to be at, etc. And so there's these pockets of time where you're always out of balance in some way. I think that's what you're saying. It's like at any given period of time, you're going to be 100% here and 0% there. You're not really going to be able to be 50-50 any one period of time. But maybe
Right.
over the period of like a month or two, you'll find some way to balance those things out. And
Right.
that's real. That's real. And I also find that people, when they approach entrepreneurship, they want to approach it in that way, that balance 50-50. And then when they fail, they're like, man, I'm bad at this, or I shouldn't be doing this. And they beat themselves up and they go through this whole emotional circle and cycle of what they should be doing. You got to watch out for that too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said that. Failure is part of the journey. They always say in Silicon Valley, if you don't fail, then you're doing something wrong. But also, they also want you to fail fast or succeed quick. There's no middle ground in Silicon Valley. So, they want to see results. They want to see, customers. They want to see paying customers. They want to see scale. Like, there's just so much is going so fast. You're just like, dang, can I keep up? And even when I was, in the accelerator, I just had so many things hit me, what I'm saying, in life. And I'm just like, dang, I'm behind in this assignment. I got to do this. I got to do that. I'm behind a week. I got to do this. I still got something to do for my daughter. Am I going to need to drop out? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so much. And you're right. Like, there's guilt you feel when you're raising kid or kids. And, as a single parent, you try to have the best support system you can, but sometimes they just not all available. You got to just thug it out and do your thing. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't got time, you just ain't got time. You just have to spend all your time in that one pocket. Like I said, the journey is, it's a rewarding journey and a fulfilling journey because you're actually doing what you're passionate about and you can live with that every day. Some people can't. They make 500,000 as Goldman Sachs investment bankers or Morgan Stanley or financial, professionals. But when they get home, they have to live with something else. And I don't know if everybody can say that they are passionate and they love what they do every day. Money is nice, but once you drive the Ferrari off, you know what I'm saying, you go to work and you get all the investments and everything that you get with that and all the bonuses and everything that you accrue. What then happens with your life? You know what I'm saying? What happens with your heart and what you're meant to do? Are you really meant to do that though? Did you actually ask God and be like, am I supposed to be an investment banker? What does that look like for you when you come home and you unclothe yourself and you're just naked in your house? What do you stand for? You know what I'm saying? And people got to think about that. It's either I save the world and be an entrepreneur, or I work a 9 to 5 and nothing's wrong with it. You work a 9 to 5 and you become an independent contributor. You are impacting the world in both lanes, right? 9 to 5, entrepreneur, full-time entrepreneur, or both, or you're doing both. You're impacting the world. The difference is you're impacting the world as an entrepreneur and a founder to change the world. You're impacting you're impacting the world as a 9 to 5 or an independent contributor for somebody else so they can change the world. That's the difference.
Do you think that entrepreneurship is a lonely journey?
I do. I can't necessarily tell you how many days I'd be like, even when I'm dating people or off and on dating or in relationships or whatever the case may be, like, it's this thing you feel and you're just like, dang, I love, and people that know me know I love ink education. Like, it's tattooed on my arm right here. Like, so I love what I do. I love students. I love math like it was a girlfriend. Like, I'm in love with what I do. Like, I've never been in love with somebody, and I'm just being transparent, even on this podcast, right? I've never been in love with somebody. I've had love for somebody deeply, but I've only been in love with what I do. And now with my daughter, obviously, she's obviously like my love, right? And as a parent, all of our kids are like that. But it's just different thing. And when you can't flow with your passion and do that every day, or you get pulled from it, it's like this lonely thing, like this lonely world you're in. You go through a lot mentally as an entrepreneur and a business owner, from failed deals to I don't know how I'm gonna make payroll to I don't know how I'm gonna pay myself. I don't know how I'm gonna pay this mortgage. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I don't know how I'm gonna do that. Um, and nobody else can save you. You know what I'm saying? You find yourself mentally in a place of solitude with nowhere to get out. It's like a
Yeah.
hole, but eventually you'll climb yourself out.
I also find that as an entrepreneur, when you have wins, right? Like maybe there's something that you've been working on, maybe you've been looking for a big client or you were
Yeah.
applying to the accelerator and you get it and you got
Mhm.
that excitement and you're like, yeah. And then you want to share it with someone and you go and you share it with the person and they are not hyping you up to the level of hyping upness that you would have wanted to be at. They are like, oh, that's good. Good for you. It's like, no, no, that's not good. You better start jumping on chairs and jumping on the sofa because I've been working for 6 months to get here. That's
Yeah.
also a lonely feature of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it is. I've seen that too. People be like, "Oh yeah, man, this happened, right?" Like, and the person's like, "Oh, okay, cool, like, great." You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, like, and what? Like, when we made, let me see, what was it? 2021. 2021 was when I made the Forbes list, right? And we're, I think, still even to this day, the first and only Black uh tutoring brand to ever make the Forbes list in history, right? And so um, like that's most entrepreneurs' dream is to make Forbes, like to make a list, get an article written about them in Forbes, make the cover of Forbes. Like they call it the Forbes trilogy, right? You make an article, then you make a list, and then you get on the cover. So that's my final step. So I got a lot of work to do. But I think from me going from nothing or zero, now I'm a 19-time award-winning entrepreneur and edupreneur. The awards, they speak volumes about the work, but all of that work is transpired behind the scenes and people don't see it. So they're never going to feel the same excitement that we do, right? As entrepreneurs when we do accomplish certain goals. And I think it's always that person. It's always that one person. It's always that friend. It's always that loved one that's fallen two buckets. They're not going to be as excited as you, or they're not going to support you the way you thought. And you would think that they do, but they don't always do, right? And it'd be the ones, you've probably heard this saying a dozen times. It'll always be the ones closest to you to screw you the most. And I think that as an entrepreneur, you got to watch your back. You know what I'm saying? Because you're only one moment from maybe somebody taking your stuff, maybe somebody being a snake and stabbing you in the back, or people always will watch you. What they say, you clap for my wins, right? But you want to stab me in my back behind the scenes. So there's people even on social media. They probably watch you, troll you, follow you, and all that. And while that's great, they're also probably waiting for you to fail one day too. So you got to look at who you surround yourself by when it's that lonely road. Sometimes you got to, it is what it is. And you got to lock in and have blinders on and just don't let nobody distract you. No women, no men, no relationships, no family. You just go all in. Sometimes I just look at my daughter and be like, dang, it's just you and me. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to get this done. I mean, my mom is here, you know what I mean? And my dad is in the city. Both of them are here. I do interface with my mom quite a bit, but at the end of the day, it's just, they're not going to be here forever, and they're not always available either. Right. They're getting older too. So, when you just have that you and me thing going on, now you have a focus of, I'm doing everything I'm doing for my next of kin.
Yeah.
And then you got to go from there. Let that drive you.
I think this idea that entrepreneurship is something that you do for yourself. You spoke about impact and you spoke about love of like what you're doing. And I think a lot of people probably need to sit with that for a bit because we always get so caught up on how much are you making? How much money are you bringing in? And the money will come, right? But you have to be able to sustain through these periods of loneliness and periods of failure. and periods of not knowing if you're going to be able to make mortgage or car payments and things like that, because that's the real deal. There's nothing else after that. It's just you. And I think, to what you said at the beginning, that entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And that's why I do this on the show, is talk about it. Like, well, okay, you want to leave your corporate job to be an entrepreneur. What does it look like? Well, let's talk to some people who have done it. And you've done it and you're running with it. And I think it's great to hear your story, and also particularly as a Black man who's done something like this, to talk to other Black men listeners and let them hear from your experience what it's like, because it is real, but it's possible and it's something that you can do. And I guess one last question I'd have for you before we close out is, if you were to give a bit of advice to any listener who's listening, who's considering making this big, crazy leap into entrepreneurship, what would you say?
Man, first thing I say is keep going. You just made a point about all these things that happen. Yes, there are a lot of things that happen in entrepreneurship. We're in a crazy time, y'all, right now with the administration. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of who you voted for, I'm not going to point no fingers and call no names. But I will say this: regardless of what you did, the administration is very interesting right now. We're getting people who are millionaires struggling. We get people who are, thousandaires that's struggling, right? When you're doing when you're going to programs being lost, DEI is gone. People are, just found out yesterday, I think, on social media, that I think there's some things going on with some of the HBCUs and funding. So now what are they going to, how are they going to graduate because of the scholarships that are being taken away? Like, it's so many things that are happening that you got to keep a pulse on. But if you're in entrepreneurship, the one thing you got to do is keep going, though, right? You're going to come into places where you want to give up. I felt it before. I've spent time saying, I just want to close up Inc. Education. And I have to always sit with that question. And sometimes I come to tears, and I'm just like, what if there's this kid, right? And, they've been going to us for a long time for tutoring. You know what I'm saying? And now, the prime example, I have one of my students who is graduating now. She came to me in the 7th grade, 8th grade. I brought her up. I was like, she's like my little sister. And, she used to hate math and hate science and hate tutoring. But then I was able to coach her and mentor her into success. And then she finally graduated at pre-vet. So how you go from not wanting to do nothing to pre-vet? Like, what? Like, you know what I mean? And as a Black girl, seeing that, I think, what if I gave up on her and I just quit and I just said, you know what, F Inc. Education, I'm closing up shop. All these people that are coming to us for tutoring, they're going to have to figure it out. So then you got to be like, well, that kid may not have became a doctor and saved lives and made some sort of solution or cure for something because you gave up on them. And so I think one of the big pieces is keep going and don't give up as long as it makes sense. There are some times you got to close up and you got to pivot. But, but keep going. The journey is rough. The other part is really study what you're trying to solve, like the people that you're trying to solve it for, and your clients, like your customers, whatever. Study them and let them drive you where you need to go. Third point, there's never going to be a balance. You just have to figure it out, right? Just like people always bring up this whole 50-50 thing and all these relationships and all this other stuff we always hear, right? With the percentages. Who cares about the percentages? Whatever works for that family is going to work for that family, whether it's 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever the split is, if there is a split, whatever works, just do it, right? So figure out your rhythm in entrepreneurship. And if you need to hire people to help to run things and make things more efficient and better for you, then you do it, right? Hire when you're not the smartest. Another thing, the last point I'll probably say as advice is read. Remember back in the day, y'all, when slavery was around, and it's way before we were born on this call. But what did they do back then, right? To keep us from being super smart, they kept all the information in books, and we couldn't read the books, right, back then. So now we have all this access, and we always hear about 40 acres and a mule. We always hear about, you know what I'm saying, the stuff that happened in the past. Okay, cool. We get it. I understand it. But it's time to move on from that. We have access to books. We have access to AI. We got access to search, ChatGPT. Google Gemini, LLMs, whatever you want to call it. We have the access, right? Of course, there's conversations about reparations and all that stuff too. But now that we have data, just read and study. And then you act from that. You know what I'm saying? We got the same access everybody else got when it comes to reading stuff. I ain't going to say opportunity because we still ain't there yet either as far as opportunities come. But reading and information, we have it. We can't blame nobody else no more. We can't blame our uncles, our cousins, our moms and dads. We can't blame mentors. They're all there to guide us. But guess who has to make the final decision? You. So I leave people with that. Read. Continue to read and be inquisitive. Be a lifelong learner, and you can grow yourself from within by doing so. And if you have kids, be a lifelong learner for them. I can't tell you how many times like our people don't leave no legacy. You have to figure it out, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's credit, whether it's leaving them a house, leaving them some money, leave them with something. Like Denzel Washington said, I'm gonna leave here with something, right? Make sure your kid leaves here with something, right? Because legacy has no bounds if you do it right. Make a trust, do something that makes sense to leave to them. And that's what I'll say.
Jay Veal, thank you so much for your time on the show. And more importantly, the words of wisdom that you've given to us in terms of what it's really like to build a business, but also about passion and impact. And I think that those that are listening to this episode will really be able to take away some important pieces of that. And we'll be following your journey. We'll be following Inc. Education, seeing how it's scaling. You've got a fan here, so I'll make sure I go follow that on social media, and we'll have your links below in the show notes. But what platform do you think is the best for people to use out of Instagram
Um,
and other ones that you have? What's the best one?
I think if y'all want to follow my journey or follow me, definitely Instagram at the top tutor, TheTopTutor. Facebook too. But I have a lot of following. I think over probably 22,000 people on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, definitely want to go to my LinkedIn, linkedin.com/IN, I think /Inc tutoring, INC tutoring. And yeah, that's pretty much the best place to follow me. I think Threads and Instagram are really the same platform. So y'all can just go move over to Threads too if need be. But yeah, those are the best platforms. Brightmaps.ai is the new, EdTech venture that I'm chasing now, right? So if y'all want to follow that journey, hopefully we will be raising, getting some VC, some venture capital at some point to scale that organization. And hopefully we'll become the first unicorn EdTech firm in tutoring and tutor matching to come. So y'all just check out the journey.
We will. We will. Jay, thank you so much for your time on the show, and we'll be following you.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to today's episode. I appreciate when you guys tune in and the time that you take to listen to the show and support us. And I have one thing that I'd love for you to do that would really help us out, which is rate the show. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you rate it. You can do it on whatever platform you're listening on. That would do wonders for us. And if you really want to be a super fan and really support the show, there's a link below that you can support us and donate a small monthly contribution, which allows us to continue to create great content for you. Thanks so much again. Appreciate you, and see you next time.